So we move to chapter 4 today, which is Krishna's counsel on the battlefield. And the chapter sort of is the summary chapter of the Gita and how Simon has trained by his teacher, Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Swami Maharaj. He sort of sets up the Gita framework into 4 parts, as in 4 sections. And different authors have done different things with describing how the Gita can be divided. In this version of the Gita's commentary, Simon Haas has broken this down into 4. He calls them set out on the journey of the soul. So we are all sleeping heroes, and when we move away from the ordinary world and confront our challenges and problems, we set out on a call to adventure. And that's what the journey of the soul is also. In this human life, we have an opportunity to go beyond the typical problems and things that we face to live in a ordinary existence. And something shakes us up to think about bigger existential questions. And those then become our pathway. It kind of illuminates the pathway for the journey of our soul. So that's what set out on the journey of the soul means. And there's a separate chapter. We'll come to that. So chapter 4 is more like a summary chapter, which in Simon Haas's book corresponds very much with chapter 2 of the Gita, which gives us the meaning of the word Gita in an interesting way. And there's a monk I know who's also used the acronym GITA to explain what the whole Gita is all about. We'll touch on that as well. So in Simon Haas's book, the second section of what he's going to tell us about the Gita is let every step be its own reward. And so this is more about karma yoga, how to do detached work. In short, I'm not going to elaborate too much because we'll have to do a lot more about this and internalize karma yoga in much more detail as we go. And then in the beginning of chapter 4 in Simon Haas's book, he talks about let discernment be the warrior's sword. So this corresponds with what we typically call Gyan Yoga. So this is the last 6 chapters of the original Gita. And I was curious as to why he placed it before Bhakti Yoga. I think for effect, because Bhakti Yoga is the jewel within the jewel box of this Gita packaging. And that is kept towards the end here to give this text a flow. But in the actual Gita, you will see that the first 6 chapters are about Karma Yoga, how to live life. The second 6 chapters are Bhakti, or the jewel in the jewel box, Bhakti Yoga, how to love, and how to love well, rather. And the final 6 sections of the original Gita is about how to let go, because with knowledge, what do you really do is to get that avidya removed. In the mood of bhakti, we can do the right action with the right, on the platform of the right knowledge to move ahead. So yeah, this was kind of the start of this chapter. One thing that he talks in the first page itself is these teachings are meant for the most difficult and demanding action, right? So I'll share my screen and begin the slide deck. We can also discuss this as we go along. So we all know that we spoke about how Bhagavad Gita opens with Arjun's very public meltdown. And we also know that Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjay, what is happening, right? And what he's expecting is they've gathered to fight. Tell me a little bit more about what is the fight all about? How is, give me the details, the gory details of which weapons are used, which warrior is doing well, which warrior is injured, which side is looking stronger, who's scoring the next goal. So he's about what is going on. Just keep telling me the running commentary, the cricket. commentary is what he's looking for. But what does Sanjay do? He's focusing on one little thing that is happening, according to Dhritarashtra, that might seem very irrelevant. Why is Sanjay, instead of telling him what he wants to hear, talking about a meltdown that Arjun is facing at the critical time of action? I think that was really well explained in this section of the book. But it also highlights that, there are two types of wars. One is a spiritual journey that we are on, and the adversaries that we are facing within us in this human body is the true war that we have to win. And so the Gita is the book which helps us understand what our true enemies are. And there's a friend of mine who's also, a bhakti yoga practitioner in the US, and he has this course which he's designed, which is called Dealing with Our Six Enemies. So it's like reawakening our soul's true purpose by dealing with the six enemies of our mind. And that's pretty much the crux of the Gita. As in, if you were to take away what the Gita can do for us, it's really a scripture which doesn't talk about cosmic declarations and gives us divine assurances that if we do this, we'll reach heaven. Otherwise, we'll have to repent for our sins in hell. It's a very different life manual here that we are talking about and dealing with. So it's really important to internalize and make it our companion and trusted guide. So where are they at? They are at Kurukshetra. It's a place of illumination, like I mentioned. It's also called Jyoti Sar, which is like there's a certain definition where the exact rendition of the Gita, or where Sri Krishna recited the Gita to Arjun, had this conversation. That specific location in Kurukshetra is called Jyotisar, which means a place where the essence of all knowledge was illuminating Krishna and illuminating Arjun. In short, it illuminates the whole world, because all of us are in need of what Arjun needs. We are not able to deal with our own enemies. He talks about what those enemies are, right? Like there's a whole list, and it's really important. These are disabling forces like rage, fear, lamentation, unease, confusion, jealousy, boredom, arrogance, self-pity, greed, contempt, resentment, judgment, hate, unkindness, and perpetual want and discontent. I mean, this list could go on. There's another senior devotee I know who's written books on emotional intelligence from the Gita perspective, and this list is way longer. But then most of them can be grouped into six, which is the six enemies we were talking about. And different shades of those six enemies are represented in this longer list. So the six enemies are lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, and attachment, or being illusioned with attachment. So Arvind and I were doing a side thing on WhatsApp once about what is the difference between lust and greed. And then the base is desire. What do we do with the desire and how do we, which energy is more heightened when we are kind of engulfed with our desire or cannot control our desire, differentiates what is lust and greed. And we could go on to explain that a lot more in different sections when we talk about divine and demoniac qualities in humans, and those enemies which are demoniac is something lust is detailed a lot more than. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. These teachings are meant for the most difficult and demanding action we talked about in our life, and they are about fighting the enemies within and winning. That's something we also kind of covered. We talked about the field, Kurukshetra being the field of elimination. We cannot really, Kuru means to act, karo, like, in Hindi you also have ye kaam karo types. So Kuru is kind of the source word, and karo comes from there. Is the field of action. You cannot do work in the second that has gone by. You cannot do something in the past. You cannot invent a time machine ordinarily to go back and act. So action is always now, it's in the present. So in some sense, what we have control over is now. And I think many of the Eastern philosophies converge on this idea, everything is the present. But the Bhakti philosophy takes that to another level, as to fine, everything is now, you have to act now, but with what mood, what bhakti, what knowledge is how it differentiates everything else. So we covered the idea of how the Gita's main purpose is to the reader should get that mood of bhakti as something that to live by, and that in a way illuminates every other aspect of what it means to be successful or what it needs to be wise. If you develop bhakti yoga, these qualities automatically surface. And this, interestingly, is part of what the last verse of the Gita is also about, when Sanjay says that, where there is Arjun and where there's Krishna, there's triumph is guaranteed, good fortune arises, there's wise action. So he gives this promise. So there's a Falashruti. Every Shastra, Darshan Shastra has, or every Shastra, in fact, in India has a Falashruti very clearly defined. Generally, there's a whole Mahatmya, which is the Gita Mahatmya, the first few verses, but not where Dhritarashtra Vacha, Karma Kshetra, Kurukshetra. It's before that. Maybe we could study the Mahatmya also in much more detail. These verses are really going to help us. And then closer to the end, it summarizes the Mahatmya in a way as to what you'll benefit in the Falashruti. So, okay, now moving forward. So how do we really develop this skill set, right? We may not have control over what occurs in our life, but we can control what choices we make and the actions we take. So this is the crux of the Gita, really. And the beauty of this book is, fine, it's in Sanskrit. So we use Bhagavad Gita as it is, as the source book. It's by a very senior devotee who then went to the US and spread Krishna consciousness and started the ISKCON movement. And he became a leader in the movement all over the world. And today, close to thousands temples all across the world, many farm communities, and many independent centers who sort of swear by and practice the Bhakti Yoga tradition based on this book. So this book is really an offering of love Srila Prabhupada gave to the world, and is highly respected everywhere. So he talked about the Gita and kind of broke it down for a Western audience in his commentaries, which are called purports. Gives you purpose, or rather, once you read it, it kind of gives you a reason why you read it and what you can do with it. So there's the verse, there's the transliteration in English so that you can recite it in whatever way. And of course, you can recite it perfectly also if you find a good teacher in Sanskrit, Hindi. And then there's word-to-word meaning in English, and then there's the translation, and then Srila Prabhupada's purports. A very powerful book. It really makes things specific, clear, but also gives you the dense knowledge, because once you read the purports, you get a sense of what this book is about. So Gita, in short, is a book which helps you establish a relationship with divinity, which in a way is our true dharma. Our soul's dharma is to reestablish that lost connection. We were tethered. We've somehow, covered with illusion and avidya through our impurities and ignorance. And we cannot see the sun because the clouds are so thick during the monsoon that we are unable to see. But yeah, I'm getting a little carried away. But the monsoon clouds are also a reminder of Krishna. And hence, if we look at the clouds and not feel ignorant, but go towards the Gita, we'll eventually, be able to blow away the clouds, all our worries, all our anxieties, all our anarthas, lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, attachment. And we'll have a much deeper sambandha. So the practice of studying the Gita is called Abhideya. But that's not just studying the Gita, it's also applying it in your life, in your relationships, in your everyday action. And that is what the Gita will cover and tell us. So a guru comes in and helps us understand our true identity, which is our relationship with divinity, but also tells us about how to practice from a perspective of understanding our swadharma and our nitya dharma or sanatan dharma. So something which is eternal is the soul's duty of service, of devotional service. But also, in the true sense, we are most happy when we live a life of service rather than live a life of want. And because when we serve, we feel happy that we've served someone, and that happiness is more than what the happiness the person gets. So that's called bliss or ananda. And once we practice building this relationship and through this doing these duties and with full understanding of our spiritual identity, we reach that perfection stage, become a Mahatma and then a yogi, person who says what he thinks and does what he says, someone who's paradukha dukhi and parasukha sukhi is the stage, and someone who doesn't need something outside to make them happy, not the IPL match or not the next movie or whatever else. So that's where you become Atmarama. So this acronym GITA of the Gita is also one way some authors have used to summarize the Gita, which is the chapter 2 of the original book. So, but of course, the scholars over 500 years from the Holy Land of Vrindavan have studied the Gita and talked about it from the perspective of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, which is relationship, practice, and perfection. So the slide deck that I'm using is by this organization Thinkin, which I'm also a part of. And so many of the devotees in guidance with senior monks and practitioners came up with a easier sort of framework to understand chapter 2. And this was redefining success was chapter 1, and we've covered a bit of that, but we'll move on. Rediscovering identity is what chapter 2 is about, the GITA framework. And then repositioning lifestyle is what we'll get into. And what Simon Haas talks about is let every step be its own reward. This is actually chapters 3, 4, and 5, or repositioning a lifestyle to make every step its own reward. Remolding our mind, what our monkey mind does, is what chapter 6 is all about. Because even after we start reorienting our lifestyle, our mind still messes things up for us. It doesn't let us be superheroes. It wants us to definitely be part of the Kuru army. And the Kuru army is outnumbering the Pandavas, right? In this chapter, in Simon Haas, he talks about how the Kurus outnumber. But if we use the Dharma framework, which is Satchit, Anand, and Tapa, and practice devotional service, which is association, doing these sanghas, having these conversations, doing some meditative practice that works for us. Chanting the Mahamantra is obviously a prescribed activity in the Bhakti Yoga tradition. You can start with whatever practice that you have, and it can really uplift you. So then you can obviously study these books together, chant together, you can kirtan together. For the Bhakti Yoga is all about dancing, singing, and feasting. So you feast together, and it's a joyous tradition. In India, festivals are there to bring communities, but also the deeper meaning is taught all through childhood for people to grow. Okay, so I'll stop here. We'll take some reflections and questions, and we can move on. In fact, if you've read the rest of the chapter, you might want to, highlight something else that I might have missed. Any comments, reflections? Go ahead.
Yeah, Arjun, if you can just expand on the two duties that you mentioned a little bit. What are they supposed to
be? Yeah, surely. I think that's a good question. Let me stop sharing my screen. So when we have, when we look at our life, we look at it from a body and mind perspective, right? And a lot of Arjun's problems were because of his misidentification of his different roles, right? I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a nephew, I'm a grandson, I'm a student of so and so. And he was clouded because he got emotionally attached to some of these so-called bodily temporary roles, right? Uh, you in your lifetime itself, you have so many roles which you've outgrown as an infant, as a child, as a student, as a young professional, as a leader in the industry, now, say, taking on even philanthropic work or whatever else, right? We keep changing even in our actions, but we also change bodily, like our cells change every 5, 6 years, according to some scientific study. The way we think changes, our orientation, disposition changes. As we move in life, we go through midlife crisis. Many people who then sort of veer towards spirituality or finding deeper existential meaning. So we are not the same people. So, but because that's how the design of the world is, it's temporary. And so when we do things only for our body and mind, we are missing out our soul's hunger, right? It's not being the thirst is not being quenched. We aren't really doing much for our soul. So the spiritual duties that we have are what I was talking about, the bhakti yoga, understanding the framework of what the soul's characteristics are. How does that really apply, not just in our spiritual growth, but also in our duties in the world, which is how can we integrate the word integration is really important. How do we integrate spiritual wisdom into our day-to-day life, into our professional life, into our work life, family life, and any ways that we are contributing elsewhere other than at home or at work, through our volunteering work or whatever else, or a contribution through our art or craft or writing. So how do you integrate spiritual wisdom into this to sort of float through the world instead of being bogged down by it? It takes a lot of effort to maintain lives and maintain a life of anarthas, which is the six enemies. But once you're able to see through things and serve and become Atma Rama, the two duties kind of integrate with each other. So there's Swadharma, which is our material duties, which based on our Varna and the ashram we choose, which also gets influenced by how we look at the kind of wealth we want in life. And wealth is not just money. So, and the Sanatan Dharma is our soul's journey. Okay, fine, great. We've got the, yeah, Gayatri, fine, go ahead, ask your question.
Yes, yes. I remember you mentioning about Satchit Anand and Tapa as well.
Yes.
At our student level, we have a very, very unpredictable schedule. Sometimes we can't really have a fixed schedule to follow all these. So, what do you think would be like the most effective way, at least at a student level, to make sure to follow all these?
So time management, right? So I think
Yes, sir.
we will cover this in a lot of detail in the Karma Yoga, like as this the next chapter begins. But in short, I can leave you with one thought. See, having a righteous duty, doing what is right as your role as a student. Being a busy student is really good, actually. Someone who's lazy as a student is perhaps not the ideal situation. So that's the time where you have the energy, the youthful vigor, and to really contribute with your knowledge and contribute to the community in your college. So do that. That is your truth. I mean, your truth is you're a student. And a student is sincere, has the humility to follow command of your teachers. And of course, teachers have to be also inspiring for sure. But that sincerity, to be that, having that Upanishad mood, lean in and listen to your teachers, right? Just be the first bench people, that's fine, or even wherever, but it's not about where you sit, but it's really about paying attention. So do your truth, which is being a great student, but make sure that you're also remembering and purifying your soul. I mean, the coverings of your soul. So that's Cheto Darpana Marjanam, which is how do we make our heart an altar which is clean, make your heart a temple and temple altar which is clean, so that you can invite divinity and you can invite the connection of divinity in each other and everyone you meet. So that remembrance is really important in any role, whether you're a student or a householder or whatever roles you wear, hats you wear. So that's Satchit, which is discernment. What do you ingest? So be mindful about your habits. And habits obviously get formed by emotions, thoughts, words, and actions. So be mindful of all these. And all of this gets influenced by what you ingest through social media, through your phone, whatever else. So there's a whole process in the Gita. We're jumping forward, but Satchitanand, if you understand the whole Gita also. Because the Gita gives you a lot more detail. And of course, by having that serving mood, you get more detached from the fruits of your work, because you know that there's always something to do in terms of helping others and contributing to the world. You get detached from the results. You're working in the righteous mood, following righteous principles of Satchitananda, remembering divinity and contributing with selfless love. The results become irrelevant because they're actually out of your control. So you surrender, that you take Sharanagati of divinity. And actually, when you do that, it's like a whole, your heart is creating a space where you can actually pump more blood in some sense into your actions, instead of being worried about the result. And I think this knowledge is not taught in schools. And it's really a shame that we talk about anxiety and we talk about DEI and inclusion and everything else, but it's all surface level. It really doesn't go to the crux of the matter. And then you realize that you actually have a lot of free time. When you live your life with Satchitanand and Tapa, it doesn't mean you don't free up your time. Actually, you free up a lot of your time because all the nonsense is gone out of your life. And that remaining time, you can spend more time in such discussions and reading and writing, journaling. Okay, fine, answer sufficient. Is okay, satisfactory?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great question. All right, so we've crossed our time. Look forward to building on this conversation. See you tomorrow.
Bye,
Okay,
sir.
thank
Good
you.
day.
Thank you.